Hey guys, welcome back to the Sub-D modeling training series for Cinema 4D. It's been some time since I have put together a tutorial for this series, so I thought it was time to go ahead and make a new one. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about a particular type of hole that I recently had to model, and this is the hole here. This is just an air pump, and on the back of the pump there's a place for an air filter. And you can see it's basically just a rounded rectangular shaped extrusion into the back. Nothing really all that special. But down here at the bottom there is this little groove which appears to be, I guess you would call it a half of a hemisphere shape. And this is just so you can stick your finger into it to press up on a clip to pop that clip out so you could get to the air filter that sits here in this hole. Now, even if you never have to model anything like this, it still makes good practice to find little odd shapes like this and try to model them. So this is what we're going to be doing here. And also I'm going to provide a link to this image in the description to this video, just in case you want to follow along and use it, because we're going to be using it as a reference image. Alright, so I'm going to go to a front view. I'm going to turn the grid off. And I'm going to grab the image and I'm going to drop it in. And you can see the hole is down here, and just as a preference I'd rather have it up here sitting above the world origin in the center. So I'm going to hit Shift V to bring up the properties for the viewport here. And I'm going to use the offset for X and Y just to push it over and up. Alright, so not only do I want to use this background image as a reference, but I also want to use a spline. So let's create a rectangle spline. And I'm just going to scale this down, make it editable. We just want to eyeball this. It doesn't have to be perfect, and more than likely it's not going to be perfect, because even though this image was taken from the rear of the object, you can see that it's still slightly angled. So this is not going to line up 100%, but that's okay. Alright, so we want to round the corners, so I'm just going to hit Control A to select all of the points. Right click and go to chamfer. I'm going to hit Apply, and the real-time update is turned on, so all we have to do is just click on the radius value here until we find something that we like, and that looks pretty good there. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to add this little half circle shape down here. So I'm going to create a circle spline. Drag it up into place. And we want to take the circle spline and shrink it down as well. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Maybe we'll just scale it down just a little bit. And we want to take it, push it back over to centered out. And we want to use the spline mask. So I'm going to grab the spline mask. Where are you at? Here we go. I'm going to drop the circle in, and then I'm going to drop the rectangle spline in, and there's our shape. And we can just look at it here in the perspective window. So that's the shape we're going to be using. And I'm going to take the spline mask, I'm just going to make that editable. I'm going to change the color to something nice and bright that we can see. And then I'm going to pull it forward, that way it's sitting in front of any polygon object that we're going to be modeling. Alright, so there's a couple of different ways that we can do this. You can start out using the Polygon Pin Tool, which as you can see I'm using R16 now, but I have yet to actually play around with the Polygon Pin Tool to become familiar with it. So rather than doing that, I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way that I've become so accustomed to using, which is just starting out with a polygon object and then shaping it into the shape that we want. So I'm going to use the polygon object. I'm going to change the orientation, make that editable. And we're just going to line this up with the spline. All right, I think that'll be fine. Now let's go over to the shading and change the shading. All right. Now if we drop this into a subdivision surface object, which I was about to call HyperNerd because I've been so used to calling it that, we drop that in, it rounds the corner for us, but as you can see, that's way too much. So I'm going to grab the knife tool, and what we want to do is we want to add some vertical and horizontal cuts, and we want to do that at the edge where the edge of the polygon object meets the spline. So I'm going to go down here to this bottom corner to show you. So you can see the what we've got here is the spline comes down and it's coming down straight, and then all of a sudden it begins to curve and bend, and right about there is where it meets the edge of our polygon object. So that is the area where we want to make our cut at. So we want to do a vertical cut there, and then we want to do a horizontal cut there, a vertical cut there, and one up here at the top, another horizontal one there. And just by adding those 4 cuts, you can see that it's now beginning to take shape, but we still need to make some adjustments. So if we were to go down here and select this outside corner point and pull it in, align it up with the spline, you can see now we've created these very long gaps at the side here and down here at the bottom, and of course that's not going to work. So in order to fix that, what we need to do is grab the knife tool again, and we need to make some additional control edges. So I'm going to make one there and another one there, and more than likely let's make it a little closer. Another one there, and this one here that we made, the first one, we'll pull it down some. Alright, so we'll go back down to the corner, and you can see now that it's taking shape and looking much better. So now we'll go over to this corner, we'll pull that one in, and you can see there's still a little bit of a gap right in there. So to fix the gap, all you have to do is just grab these points here and pull them over until the gap is filled, and the same for these here. Pull those down, and then this point here will need to be positioned again. There we go. Now we'll do the same for the ones up here at the top. Pull those over, pull those up. Alright, and then we got one more to go. Alright, so there's our basic rounded rectangular shape. Now we need to work on this little hole down here for the shape for that. So what I want to do is I want to create a cut directly in the center. So I'm going to take the knife tool and I'm just going to cut up. And I'm not going to go all the way through right now. I'm just going to take it up to there. And I want to make sure that these points are centered out. You can see that they're over slightly in the negative X value, so we're just going to zero those out. And one thing that I forgot to do was to add another spline down here as a reference spline for this half circle. So let me grab a circle spline and we'll pull the circle spline up and position that into place. Scale it down just a little bit. Alright, now the reason why I'm adding another one, we're going to make this a different color. The reason why I'm adding this is because we're going to need a low segment value to find out where we need to place our points at on the polygon object. So what I want to do is I want to change the intermediate points over to uniform, and I want to take this down to a value of 1. Now this is going to give us a reference point to where we can place the points of our polygon object to line them up here. But the problem is that it's a little small right now, and the points are actually you can see the points here of this spline are sitting directly over the top of our red reference spline, but they need to be pushed out. And they need to be pushed out to a point where this line here is sitting over top of the red reference line. And you might recall this from, I believe it was part 3 of this series where I talked about how to model a hole. So we'll push that out until it lines up there. And we're going to need to push this forward. You can see it's actually sitting there over top of the polygon, so let's push it forward. And we may need to come down with it. Well, we'll just see here in a minute. So let's click on the polygon object. Let's go over into edge mode, and let's see if we can try to select these 2 edges here. More than likely, let's hang on a second, because I just noticed that we need to create a point here at these edges where it starts to dip down. So let's create some cuts there. So we'll start one here, and we'll go up with that, and then one over here at this edge. We'll make one there. Okay, back to edge mode. Now let's select these 2 edges here, and we want to push those edges down. And let's turn off the subdivision surface object. Okay, so I'm going to select this point. I'm going to pull it down to where it lines up with the green reference line. We're going to do the same there, and the same there. Alright, so we'll turn the subdivision surface object back on, and there is our shape. Now these corners in here need to be sharpened up a lot. So we can do that just by making an additional knife cut there. And we can do that right about there and just go up with that, and we can do another one here. And then that will sharpen up those corners for us. Alright, so the next thing that I like to do is I like to select all of the polygons and just go ahead and make the extrusion. So with all of them selected, we can just control, click, and drag down, and we'll go to about maybe there. And let's look at the reference image. You can see that, okay, that goes down a little bit and then back again. So now we just need to make another extrusion. So we'll go down one more time. All right. And of course, that normal is reversed. You can see it's blue. So if we hit Control A to select all of the polygons, you can see that the inside part, which is going to be viewable, they're all reversed. So we need to hit UR to reverse those normals. And right now you really can't see the normals because they're turned off. So if we hit Shift V to go over to, I think it's the View tab, or let's see, where's it at here? Display. Here we go, right here, normals. So if you turn that on, there are the normals. And if we hit UR again to reverse, you can see that now the normals are facing the wrong direction. So we need to hit UR again to bring them out, and that's the correct orientation. So I'll just go ahead and turn that off. Alright, so the next thing that we could do is we could talk about this half circle down here, and I already see a mistake that I made. So let's go back a couple of times, and let's do a couple of undos. And the undo that we need to do, first of all, let me change these normals again. For that second extrusion that we made inward, I don't want to extrude this half circle part. So I want to only select these polygons up here. I don't want to have any of these other ones selected. So let's go ahead and extrude that back like that. Turn the subdivision surface object back on, and it's beginning to take shape. It's going to need a little work. So let's go back down here to the circle. And we want to move some of these points around, so I'm going to grab this point here, and we want to push it back. And it's starting to take shape, but we're going to need to kind of tighten up some of the corners, because right now things are a little too rounded. Alright, so before we do that, we need to make some extrusions for the outside, because it is sitting on a flat surface. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go over to Edge Mode. I'm going to grab the Loop selection to select those outside edges. Grab the Scale tool, and I'm just going to hold down Control and click and drag outward to scale those out. Okay, so let's go back to point mode. I'm going to grab the knife tool, and now we need to start tightening up some of these corners. So in order to do that, I'm just going to start right here, and I'm down on the inside of this hole. I'm just going to click here and make some cuts. I'm going to go along here. Do the same for here. That's actually a little too far away. I'm going to make it a little closer. Alright, so now we're going to do the same for the other side. Alright, if we turn the subdivision surface object back on, it's beginning to take shape. However, it looks like we may need to take the bottom point and go up with it. So let's grab the point down here on the bottom, this one here, and pull it up. We may need to go back with it maybe a little bit. Let's find out. Let's see what this looks like. Because that's where it was before, and that's too low, so we want to pull it up. And more than likely, we may need to pull all of them up. So let's see what happens if we grab all three of these, pull them up. Okay, that don't look too bad. We need to shape the bottom part a little more. So we can do that by grabbing the knife tool. We can go into loop mode, and one thing that we could do is we could continue this line down here along the bottom, or we could put a line here. Let's see what happens with that one. Alright, so that looks pretty good. And technically, if you wanted to, you could continue on with this here. And we'll just take this up like that. Now there's a problem here in the corner because we've created this triangle here, so we need to get rid of that. So one way that we could do this is to make a cut from this point here and just make this cut all the way down to there like that. And then we just need to dissolve that because those two triangles can become a quad. So go into polygon mode, select those, and use the dissolve tool, and now we fix that issue there. And we could do the same for the other side. Alright, now that did add an extra edge coming down here to the bottom, but that's alright, I'm not really concerned about that. We can deal with that later. So if we turn on the subdivision surface object again, it's beginning to take shape and look pretty good, but this edge here on the outside is sharp, and this edge on the inside on that rounded part, it's a little too rounded, and I want to sharpen that up some. So one way that we could do this, back to the knife tool, and let's go here and make a cut down to here. And why didn't it cut? Oh, because I'm in polygon mode with restrict to selection turned on. So back to point mode. Let's make a cut to there. And notice that we really don't have anything to grab a hold of. So what we could do is just continue this on over to this point here. Now that's going to create a triangle. So what we could do is select those two, use the weld tool to weld them to the center, and then we can grab the slide tool, hold down control, slide over to weld that one to there, and that one to there. And we could probably push that over a little bit. Let's push that over to there. We do the same for the other side. and then connect it back over to that one. Weld those together. All right, so let's move that just a little bit like that. All right, so we'll turn that back on, and now that looks a lot better. Okay, so of course this outside lip here for the extrusion, that's going to need to be sharpened up as well. So all we would need to do is just take our knife and continue with the knife cuts around the outside. And I just added a point there for some reason. How did that happen? We'll just take those all the way around. And then of course on the inside, this inside edge here down at the bottom where the filter would sit up against, that's a bit too rounded as well. So we'll just go over to loop mode. I want to make a cut in there like that. That should be all we need. And there we go. So it just depends on how sharp you want your edges to be. If you want them to be really, really sharp, then what you'll need to do is make sure that you've got your edges here close together. Whereas if you don't want them to be sharp, if you want them to be more rounded, then don't add the additional cuts along here that we've been doing. All right, now one more thing is that these outside edges that we extruded outward, they're in the shape of the actual hole, and I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these points here along with that one, and I'm going to center those out for the Y and then pull them up. And to be honest, I think I made a mistake here. So notice that we've got these points along. Let me see if I can get a better view here. This point here in the corner of the hole, this represents the corner here. These points are on the top, these points are on the side, this would be the corner. This is the point here that leads the edges up that I want to go to the corner, but notice that is not going to the corner, this one here is. So these I want to drag down, and this one here I want to drag over. So these need to come down, this one needs to go over. All right, so I'm going to select these points along here, along with the corner one, and I'm going to zero those out for the Y value. Just pull them down, pull that over. Okay, so there's one more thing I quickly want to go over before we wrap this up, and that is down here at the bottom we've got quite a few vertical edges, and two of them are very close to each other. So notice these two edges right here are very close to each other. And even though this is a flat surface, which means that it's not going to cause any problems for us because it's flat, you're not going to see any deformation in the actual mesh, this could cause a problem for you later. These two edges, you might want to use those around a corner or to help in creating a hole. Whatever it might be, these two edges close to each other could cause a problem. It really just depends on where you're going to be going with the rest of the model. But in this case, I want to get rid of one of these edges because they're close to each other, and more than likely I feel like it's going to cause problems for me. So what I want to do is go over into polygon mode, and I'm going to select these two polygons here. You can see this one plus the skinny vertical polygon, and I'm just going to dissolve them. And if we turn the subdivision surface object back on, you can see everything still looks the same, hasn't caused any problems for us, and we've alleviated one of those edges. Now down here at the bottom, there is a point that is remaining, so we'll need to clean that point up because it does hold a weight value, and that could create a problem for you later. But it is a flat surface, so not really going to be an issue, but still you don't want to leave behind any stray points. So we'll delete that one. then technically this point could be pulled over just to put a little space between these two here. This one could be moved over as well. We'll do the same over here for this side. Select those two, choose dissolve, go back to point mode, clean up that stray point, and that's basically all you have to do. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up this tutorial on this odd-shaped hole. Again, you may never have to model something like this, but it still makes good practice to model odd shapes like this, just in case you need to do something like this for future modeling. Alright, so as always, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully I'll have more of these coming soon, and I will see you guys in the next tutorial.